Hi everyone, welcome to my review of John G. Avildsen's The Karate Kid in 1984. So yes, this is a film that I've been wanting to review for quite a while. It's a film. Of course, most people have seen this. It's very very popular at times. It's been named as most of the time one of the best films of the 80s, and just of course it's launched this kind of new show recently as well, Cobra Kai. And yeah, a lot of sequels. I don't think any of the sequels are that great. I certainly do not like the remake, with Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan. Really hate that film. But yes, this film is one that I've seen many, many times. And just here's the Blu-ray. A rewatch, of course. Probably at least 20 times all the way through. I've seen this film. So quite, watched the film for me. First saw it when I was about 10, 11, something like that, and was blown away. This has always been one of my favourite films of all time. I'll just go out and say that now. It's some people don't say it's that great. I think it's definitely underappreciated, just because it wears its heart on its sleeve. You could say a lot of it is it's very very simple. On the surface, and yeah, it's kind of it definitely everyone knows it's trying to be entertaining. So some people kind of at times critics and stuff with films like that, they do tend to be a bit snobby, and think they know more, and just say this because it's so fun and outgoing and stuff. It's not a great film. But Roger Ebert and people like this would give it full marks. And yes, it is for some people one of the best films of the 80s, and for me, I'd go further. I'd say this is one of my top 100 films of all time. I think, and hear me out, of course. This film is just for me an absolute masterpiece. Just every time I see this, it just gets better and better. It really is something special. It's a film, that kind of, of course, the basic plots. If you've not seen it, and stuff is basically this 15-year-old Daniel. He's with his mother at the beginning. They're traveling from New Jersey to California, and basically they end up in this pretty crappy apartment block, and stuff. And the mother, of course, Lucille, she's saying it's going to be great and stuff, and it doesn't turn out to be so great. And of course, Daniel, tries to make friends very early on in the film. He goes to this kind of beach party and stuff, within the first sort of 10 minutes or so, and yeah, basically things go downhill from there. He starts getting bullied, and of course, yeah, this group of the bullies. You could say, of course, Johnny is the kind of the leader. Of course, they're all kind of karate. They learn karate and they go to this training place, this school. Of course, the Cobra Kai, it's referred to as, and yes, basically, the rest of the film, is kind of Ralph Macchio's character of Daniel, trying to getting trained up by, of course, Mr. Miyagi, trying to, of course, to get back and defend himself in this tournament. But also, it's a film at its heart that is just this wonderful friendship. It's a heartwarming film about these two characters. It's kind of a father-son relationship, you could say, and it's just a wonderful inspirational film. It basically teaches, kind of teaches you to keep going, and teaches you about respect and honor, and of course, not revenge, but very very different things, and of course that about karate, and it's the whole spirit of karate, and just not kind of actually really fighting, and stuff, and just the respect of it. It's a wonderful film. Of course, Pat Morita plays Mr. Miyagi, and just one of the best characters in film. Performance is just so perfect. Such a warm character. It really taps into spirituality. This film really does. As I say, for me, it doesn't get enough credit. This film, it really is such a layered one. It's so deep and just heartfelt, and it's just so much feeling in the film. It just yes, it's kind of it's kind of everyone knows that this film is meant to be more entertainment than anything, but it's just so well crafted. I think that's the main reason the critics a lot of the time don't like films like this. It's just because of that, and they feel like they can't. I don't know why, but yeah, basically they don't think it's sophisticated. But for me, it is. I think the way this film is shot and edited, the direction, it's just flawless for me. And of course, Bill Conti, done the soundtrack to this. Just wonderful music here, composed, and just all the songs used. You've got such a great soundtrack here. Just an explosion of joy, and epic kind of songs, music. Of course, Bill Conti would work on Rocky as well, the music for that. Another, of course, Avildsen film. These are the two main films, of course, he is known for. Some people maybe don't actually know it's the same director. Because of course, yeah, he's not really talked about too much, this director, but of course, launching two big kind of inspirational, you could kind of say sports films, although both not really about sports, and they're both, of course, two different decades and very popular films from each. I think Rocky, of course, definitely for me the best film by Avildsen, but Karate Kid does share a lot of similar sort of themes, and kind of the structure of the film, you could say, and the way it ends as well. Definitely very similar. But of course, it's such a wonderful film. This one again, and it's just so inspirational. These characters, of course, you get to kind of know them. This film takes its time. It's very very patient to build up these characters. Ali, of course, played by Elisabeth Shue. She is really great in the film. Really loved her. Of course, it's just a wonderful relationship she and Daniel, of course, has throughout the film. It really is just so enjoyable and just kind of heartwarming and just, yeah, it's just so much charm to the film. I love this kind of relationship. It's very warm. She's basically the only friend he has at school and stuff. He doesn't really, as I say, this film deals with bullying, wonderfully as well. It really is just perfect in that sense. It's very powerful, and of course, this relationship is one of the things, that kind of keeps the spirits up, in the film. And of course, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel, this is just one of the greatest pairings in cinema for me. Just such a great friendship, and I think just in the way that it's kind of subtly built up at first. He's basically the handyman of the apartment, and just the way he kind of overhears things at the beginning and he tries to help. Of course, Daniel. It's such a beautiful film. It really is something wonderful. This, and it just every time, when that ending freeze frame comes on, of course, with the music playing, it doesn't, there's one of the most epic moments in cinema for me, and of course, just brings the tears. It just chills, the shivers, and it's just for me one of the best final acts in film. Easily, it's probably the best part of the film as well. This stuff, it's just you could not ask for a better finale to the film, and of course. The freeze frame itself, one of my very favourites. I think maybe ones that I prefer, The Breakfast Club, which is probably the best of all time, freeze frame ending. And of course, Once Upon a Time in America. There's not too much for me that are better than this. It's just perfect. Ends on just the right note, and it's just really so epic. And of course, the whole film comes together wonderfully. Of course, the script is so good for me. I just love the script. Of course, all these characters are given depth. Of course, yeah, some people say that the bullies of the film are one-sided. I don't feel that, and I think, there's also theories that Daniel was the bully of the film, and Johnny is kind of the hero. I don't get that. I never will. I don't think that, but I do think that it's really great how they are given humanity. Some of these Cobra Kai members, of course. And you can see how they kind of they've done this for certain things throughout the film. Of course, their teacher, the head of the kind of the place that they're training, he of course pushes them really hard. Of course, they are basically scared of him and stuff, and the way he kind of brainwashes them. So you can see, how they kind of led to this, and of course, they are given a couple of them some redeeming moments, humanity, especially towards the end of the film. So it's not. I don't think it's one-sided kind of villains. I think not every film has to have a villain where or villains where they're kind of as likable as the protagonist, because that doesn't always work. But I think they're given enough basically motives, and I think just the performances are great, especially of course from Johnny's from the character of Johnny. I think all across the board performances are great. Of course, Daniel's mother, Elisabeth Shue, of course. Ralph Macchio, now he is great in the film. Really wonderful here. One of the best characters in film for me. I root for this character, from the very beginning. He's bumbling. He's kind of a shy character at times. Kind of just very kind of vulnerable, and just as well, someone who does kind of show some fighting spirit. And of course, just a wonderful kind of. The relationships he has throughout the film really reveals stuff about his character, and it's just someone who you really want to kind of succeed in the end, and it's such a pleasing film, so satisfying, and just just really for me perfect in its execution. Every act for me just it is perfect. I love the music, the use of music is just. I love 80s films, and this is just one of my favourite 80s films. A lot of them are just so warm and charming. And again, a lot of critics kind of dismiss the decade really a lot of the time. I feel just because they're more, they're trying maybe some of them more crowd pleasing, but that does not dismiss the fact that some of them, a lot of them are some of the very best films. Back to the Future. If someone says that that's a crap film, for me, they don't really know what they're on about. Luckily, a lot of people, critics even agree that that's one of the best films. But I just think some of the 80s films really get a lot of discredit, and this film is just, for me, one of the best films ever made. I think perfect use of music. The script is so wonderful, so motivational, inspirational. I love this whole kind of this narrative. It's just so thrilling, so invested. Throughout the entire film, I'm so invested in these characters. I love the kind of the mother relationship as well. I love the kind of it portrays kind of childhood in a way, teenage years, and inside kind of schools wonderfully. It's so sincere. It's so nostalgic. This film is nostalgic, of course. Just evokes that feeling in you, and just wonderful charm, and yeah, just the way it portrays, school and of course home life, and just the fact that that some people just disconnection from society and stuff, and bullying, isolation, and then of course finding through these small relationships, very kind of focused relationships, the personal stuff it focuses on. They kind of find solace, and ways to kind of deal with bullying and stuff. It's one of them films that is just truly wonderful. It's so powerful. It's so much fun. Amazing choreography, especially towards the end of the film. The actual tournament itself is just amazing. It's perfect. It's so thrilling. The editing, wow, the editing is stunning. I actually think the cinematography is masterful in this film. There's so many shots in the film that are just wonderful. I think the use of colours as well. Just beautiful film. And of course the way that the kind of fight scenes are put together. Truly something to behold. The use of music as well. You're the best. All these songs. Wow, this is an epic film, full of charm, and for me, definitely one of my favourites. There's not a single moment that I don't love in the film. Love all the characters, or at least I'm compelled by all the characters. I think the script is wonderful. Mr. Miyagi is one of the best characters in film, and so is Daniel. I think they're just so great together, and just on their own, the exposition throughout the film. This film is so well written, and performances. The placement of all the exposition throughout the film could not have been better. Mr. Miyagi is given so much depth, in the second half especially. He's kind of mysterious at first, so it's great. You really want to know more about this character, and then of course the second half, you get to know more about his past, his family, and then you can see some of the reasons as well, where he takes in this character of Daniel. It's such a wonderful film, truly human, just a joyous film. Really, whenever there's a song playing or just any scene in the film, it's full of joy and passion, and just energy. This film is never boring, and it's just, for me, it's so well crafted. I stand by this being a flawless film, and just such a perfection, such a perfection in kind of the narrative. It's so you feel so satisfied at the end, and stuff, and when that freeze frame comes on, you just you look back over the rest of the film, and of course, just what a wonderful film, thrilling ride, full of humanity, hope, and just joy. It's got a kind of wonderful romance in the film. This really is something else. I think for me, an absolute masterpiece. So yes, for me, one of the greatest films ever made, and yes, of course, if you have to see the film for the first time, see it on Blu-ray. It's really wonderful visuals, just across the board. The music, of course, as I've said, everything in the film comes together wonderfully, and for me, yeah, I'll go ahead and say it. It's one of my top 100 films, as I've said. I think it easily deserves a plus rating, and of course, if you know my channel, familiar with it, of course, any film that's in my top 100 gets at least 100% plus tier 1, and of course, it doesn't quite get the tier S. That's around about just over 50 films that get that, but this is definitely in my top 85, top 80. It's that good. For me, just a film that I connect to on every level. I think as well, the kind of the awkward situations. This is something as well, that kind of play into the film. I think just the comedy there, the kind of awkward, comedy there, it's so perfect. It's just kind of makes it more relatable, grounded, and just the way that it kind of Daniel overcomes all of his kind of problems and the bullies, of course. And yeah, just of course moving to a new place, not really knowing too much people and this, and just finding something that he truly can kind of connect with, of course. And the character of Mr. Miyagi is someone that really teaches him lessons of life, and just he's a wise character, of course, and of course just such a kind of a warm character, and it's one of the best pairings in cinema. Of course, as I said, the comedy is perfect. The use of music. This film is directed flawlessly for me, and I think in my head, I think maybe it's definitely in my top 15 films of the 80s for sure. Because there's quite a lot of 80s films that are higher than this, even at least 10. Especially films like Raging Bull and stuff. They're really high, of course, on my list. But top 15 of the 80s for sure. Along with films like Stand By Me. It's kind of that sort of level. I think just one of the best films ever made for me. And a lot of people would say otherwise. It's not that high on IMDb and stuff, 7.2. But it's just my opinion. Of course, everyone has their own opinions. I do think one of the best films ever made. Not just one of my favourites. I do think this is just such a perfect film. It's so inspirational as well, and it's just such a wonderful heart to the film. Of course, the training sequences, and just so unique. Kind of in the script and stuff. The wax on, wax off. Of course, sand the floor. It's something that you don't expect really from a film. The training sequences to be this kind of unique and different. It's not the typical kind of just showing them, the montages and stuff like that. It's very, of course, unique, and there's kind of irony in there as well. I love the whole film, of course. Perfect first act, the middle act, of course, the struggles, and so much great exposition. And then, of course, you've got the satisfying and just epic conclusion. This film, for me, is one of the best ever made, and just full of charm, full of magic moments, and just every relationship and every character really that I was compelled by, in every sense. This film is it's definitely one of my favourites, and I do think all the sequels really pale, in comparison to this. Doesn't really need to be said. I think they're nothing to do with this film, but this one is legendary. It really has that mythic feel. It's stuff of legends for me. And yes, one of my top 100 films. So that'll be appearing on the list when I do it next year, or something like that. Of my favourite, 100 films. I probably plan to do, probably actually 250 at least, maybe 500 in a compilation, set of videos, and of course showing clips and stuff. This is definitely gonna, be in my top 100. So yeah, of course, wonderful film. If you've not seen the film, highly recommend it. It's a life-changing one, and if you have seen it, let me know what you think. Some people don't like it, which is fine, but for me, one of the best films ever made. And yes, thanks for watching my review.